This is the lesson in F major from my Volume 2 method book, which you can get off thisisclassicalguitar.com or the link in the YouTube info section. So we're going to go through the F major scales and chord progressions and then take a look at a piece by Mertz. One word about the scale fingering here, and we've talked about this in other videos. I'm using my fourth finger on the top two notes of the scale. So you can use your third finger if you like, but just remember that many students at early levels are prone to avoiding the fourth finger in repertoire, and in almost all repertoire the fourth finger is needed. And in the Mertz piece that follows this, indeed the fourth finger gets used so much, mainly because of situations like this, where the third finger is needed down here while the fourth finger is active up here. That's why the fourth finger is needed so often. So I have fingered the scale in that way to make sure that students see a consistency between the scale and the piece. However, if you're thinking this is contradictory to some other books that you've seen and stuff like that, then just realize that you can definitely finger your scale with your third finger. It's totally appropriate. It even makes a certain amount of sense as one finger per fret. But again, if you think you can keep the scale and the piece separate, then by all means use your third finger. But if you're a student who's prone to avoiding that fourth finger, use the fingering that I've provided because it trains you to use what's needed for the repertoire. And that's the most important thing, is that there's a consistency between the scale and the repertoire. However, if you're a mature student and you can keep them separate, keep them separate. But I'm going to use my fourth finger in this example. This is the 2-octave F major scale. And then the F major position scale. So just remember, position scales go to the highest note and the lowest note in that area of the guitar. And we do this because we want to be able to read music within the key signature of F major, which is 1 flat. And to tell you the truth, F major pieces don't come up that often in classical guitar, but I really thought that it was necessary for students to get some experience playing with flats in this, with key signatures that use flats. So it's in your best interest because it will come up occasionally, especially in duet repertoire as well. So the position scale. And the 1-octave F major arpeggio. So for this arpeggio, you're going to need a bar on the top two notes, top two strings. So just be careful with that, because if your fingers looks like this, it's not close to the fret on the first string. So you have to swing that finger around so that it's close to the fret. Really cozy up. You should be able to almost feel the fret near both of those strings. That way it rings out clearly. So again, careful of this. Make sure it's straight and flush with the fret. And then the F major triads, same thing, you'll need a bar there. And then the chord progression, again, you'll need a bar on the F chord. So again, that's F, C, D minor, C, F. And then the 4-voice chords, these 4-voice chords are pretty much exactly the same, just the only difference is that you don't need the 4th string in the C chord, so that's the one difference. Okay, moving on to the Mertz piece. So this piece is from Mertz's method, and again, this piece is a little bit challenging. If you're teaching like a small child, you might even want to skip this one. But the main thing here is that lots of the shapes are similar, and none of the shapes are crazy difficult, but it's definitely a little bit more complicated reading-wise. Nevertheless, take it slow, and I don't think it'll be that difficult. And I've put in quite a bit of fingering in this one, so you can tell what to do. So a couple of spots in this piece that you want to look out for. If you're a more advanced player, you'll notice that sometimes it'd be more beneficial to do a hinge bar. For example, on the very last bar, it'd be more beneficial to go like this. But because this book doesn't really go into full bars not until the next volume, the volume 3 method book, I'm telling students to just hop fingers over as tastefully as possible, which will sound just fine as long as it's smoothed out. More advanced players will want to later on probably examine doing hinge bars where you bar part of the chord and then bar the whole thing. But again, don't worry about that. If you're using this method book from my first method book and into this one as a beginner, you definitely just follow my fingerings. Don't do barring when you don't have to, and just try to smooth it out. It just means that you have to hold notes until the last minute, and it'll sound just fine. Because at this level of your playing, the main thing you want to focus on is just your posture and your hand positions, reading music, and just making it sound generally legato and not getting too deep into auxiliary techniques, which we'll be doing in the next volume though, in volume 3 method book. Not too much to talk about though. There's one or two spots that are a little interesting in this piece that you'll find interesting. For example, in the second line, in the third bar, you notice that I'm using my second finger on that C, and you might ask why, but it's because our first finger is going to be needed a second later. And if we used our first finger, we'd have to jump it over at the very last second, right after an eighth note, which would probably make it choppy sounding. So by using our second finger, we can get it smooth from this note into the next one. So sometimes we really alter our fingerings, and the more advanced you get, the more you're going to play pieces where you really do have to alternate or like change your fingerings and do some like out of position stuff in order to make it legato sounding. And we'll notice that when we do our upper position playing in this book, we're going to have to alter some of our position playing in order to be legato across the strings. So that's one spot. Besides that, I don't think there's too much to talk about in this piece. Use your fourth finger on those upper two strings because you so often need your third finger down here. Besides that, just follow the fingering. I think you'll be fine. In the final line, second bar, there's one note that we didn't really go over in the scale. That's a D sharp with our fourth finger, or a D flat, sorry. A D flat with our fourth finger. So D flat and C sharp are the same note. If you count up from C, C sharp, D, or D flat. Long story short, D flat is the fifth string at the fourth fret. So when you're playing that, it fits in quite nicely, that last line. You just pop your fourth finger on there and play the open B above it. And then the F is right there. It's a dotted rhythm there. So listen to it a few times, take it nice and slowly, follow the fingerings carefully, and it's a really nice piece by Mertz though, very romantic sounding, so I hope you enjoy it.